The iPhone 6s was introduced in 2015 and set out to improve on the iPhone 6 in every possible way. It was faster, more durable, and had a better camera, and was just overall a significantly more solid phone than its predecessor. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're going to be talking about why the iPhone 6s was an unbridled success. Pun unfortunately intended. The iPhone 6s to me has always been one of Apple's best yet most overlooked phones. It was completely different from the iPhone 6 in every single way apart from the design, and was actually a huge upgrade. But before we get into all of this, we first have a quick word from today's sponsor, Wondershare. Wondershare's PDF Element is an all-in-one PDF editor that gives you powerful features to edit, review, protect, compare, sign, and convert PDFs. It's extremely robust and is easily the best PDF editor I've ever used, and it'll work on both Windows and Mac. Heck, they even have apps for Android and iOS. PDF Element is extremely easy to use. All this happening on the screen right now, this was my first time using it. And I mean, I'm not really doing anything too crazy, just kind of putting together a little resume type thing, but still, this was my first time using it. PDF Element is definitely the best and easiest to use PDF editor out there, and so I would fully recommend it. If you're interested, check the link in the description below, and maybe give the trial a shot. I don't think you'll regret it. And with that, let's get right back into the video. So as I was saying, the iPhone 6s was actually a huge upgrade. The iPhone 6, and especially the 6 Plus, was known of course for bendgate and touch disease, issues that never should have happened in the first place, but they did, and the 6s set out to fix them. The reason the iPhone 6 had the many problems it did was due to the low-grade aluminum Apple used. In their never-ending quest, at least back then, to get phones as thin and as light as possible, Apple decided to trade off the better durability for the lesser aluminum, and this was a horrible idea. While only a small number of iPhone 6s actually had issues, keep in mind that over 200 million of these phones were sold, which as a result raised the number of problems greatly. Even if only 0.1% actually had an issue with bending, that's still like 2 million people. I don't know what the actual numbers are, I'm just saying having this big of a design flaw in the iPhone 6 was terrible. But the iPhone 6s stepped things up, and while it became slightly thicker and slightly heavier, it also became an absolute unit, and is one of the best iPhones ever when it comes to durability. It's pretty darn tough. Actually, I'd argue that the iPhone 6s is one of the best phones in all regards, but I'll get to that. So the iPhone 6s fixed a problem that never should have existed, a big whoop. Well, actually, in all fairness, it was a big whoop as the 6 was extremely flawed, but it still isn't a particularly interesting or attention-grabbing upgrade. I think where things start to get heated is when we look to the internals of the 6s. That's right, we're going to talk about the most interesting subject in the world, the technical specifications of an iPhone. Part of the problem with the iPhone 6 is that while it was Apple's first foray into the formerly known phablet market, there weren't really many actual steps taken to make the 6 a better phone than the 5S. The screen was bigger, and that was basically it. Although with the bigger phone came a bigger battery, which was nice. It was very slightly faster, but with the same amount of RAM, and so in real life the difference is really minimal. The camera was practically the same, save for 60 frames per second video recording, as well as optical image stabilization on the Plus. But overall, there were just hardly any new features. Apple Pay was added, which admittedly was a brilliant move, but besides that, there really wasn't much to speak of other than those big displays. But it didn't seem like an issue at the time because people were just excited to have a phone larger than 4 inches, and who could blame them? What am I saying here? Well, I'm trying to imply that besides the bigger screen, the iPhone 6 really wasn't much better than the 5S, and still isn't to this day. The iPhone 6, I think, is one of the worst iPhone launches ever, just because it brought so little, even though it did so much. I feel like while it did sell super well, it would be a lot more interesting if it had been a much better phone than the 5S, but it wasn't. Yeah, the new screen was a big deal, but that was about it. Why not bring more improvements? This was a major redesign, the biggest we had seen in a long time, at least since the 4, but that was about it. It was mostly just a redesign. Let's look at the most recent redesign we've seen with the iPhone X. we didn't just get a new display, we also got a much better camera, 4K 60 frames per second video recording, wireless charging, a completely new design with glass and stainless steel. I mean, the 6 was a new design, but it's still aluminum, so we had True Tone, Face ID, and most importantly, an emoji. The list goes on and on. The iPhone X is probably the biggest iPhone upgrade ever, hands down, at least since the iPhone 4. The iPhone 6 was incrementally better than the 5S, but hardly even that. It was just bigger with a slightly different design. But what does this all have to do with the iPhone 6S, you ask? The iPhone 6S, in my opinion, is what the iPhone 6 should have been, but it wasn't. Even without any crazy external improvements, I'd argue the 6S was an unbridled success thanks to the plethora of features it brought. Moving past the better durability, we saw significant changes to the camera and processing speeds. So let's start with the former. In my personal, uneducated, and subjective opinion, there have been around 4 or 5 main camera upgrades to the iPhone line, while the rest are more just incremental improvements. Maybe that would be a good video, we'll see. But what's important here is that the 6S is the most recent big upgrade to camera capabilities that we've seen. You could make an argument for the 10, but the 6S still was a huge jump over the 6. We had the largest megapixel increase in any iPhone ever. We went from 8 on the 6 to 12 on the 6S. 12 megapixels seems to be the sweet spot on smartphones, with manufacturers sticking to it to this day. The iPhone 6S is one of the founders of this trend, and for good reason. Pictures on it look really good, even 3 years later. And video was also greatly improved to 4K at 30 frames per second. 4K was a big deal in 2015, and the 6S does it really well. But the camera wasn't the only main upgrade. Performance was also a big deal for the 6S, and this is what I would consider the turning point for Apple when it comes to speed. Remember when people used to call iPhones slow in comparison to Androids? Well, while the 5S temporarily shut them up with the 64-bit architecture, or at least it should have, the 6S put the nail in the coffin with the start of Apple's reign of terror in CPU performance. iPhones since the 6S have always been at the top when it comes to Geekbench, as well as real-life use. Nothing even comes close to matching it. Take any phone from 2015 and compare it to how the 6S performs today, guaranteed the 6S beats them all. Plus, the 6S is still on the latest version of software, iOS 12, and a lot of those phones from 2015 probably aren't. I don't even think Google's 2015 phone is fully updatable. Anyhow, that trend has mostly continued to today, with the iPhone XS being the fastest phone by far, thanks to just how good Apple is with their chipsets. The A9 and the 6S mixed with 2GB of RAM made for a killer device that remained unmatched by any other smartphone until the iPhone 7. Android Snapdragon processors don't even come close, and if you're about to dislike this video because I'm telling the truth, then you're in denial. The iPhone 6S brought a much better camera and much faster processing power, but the fun doesn't end there. We also got 3D Touch, one of my favorite iPhone features that in my opinion is very underrated. We got live photos, which I didn't even mention in the camera improvements. We had second generation Touch ID, which is twice as fast as what was in the iPhone 6. And best of all, we got an emoji. Hold on, sorry, that's not right. I don't think, yeah, my bad. The iPhone 6S is a phone that is not only fully updatable to iOS 12 right now, but one that actually performs well. It doesn't feel like a 3-year-old smartphone, even if it looks like it, and I think it's impressive Apple has managed to accomplish so much with this single device. The iPhone 6S can expect a good full long life with at least until iOS 14, although I could see it reaching 15 with Apple's trend of increasing the life of their S line of phones. At the end of the day, the iPhone 6S was an unbridled success. It was everything an iPhone should be, a complete and utter improvement without any drawbacks over its predecessor. And with that, I think I'm done for this video. Maybe hit that like button if you found this video interesting, and consider subscribing if you want to see more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram if you want to keep up. And with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.